strategic interests. We start with Russia saying that a Black Sea truce will only take effect if the West lifts certain sanctions. Moscow has demanded that its state-owned agricultural bank be reconnected to SWIFT payment system before it agrees to stop military activity in the region. The US has not mentioned lifting sanctions, but has promised to help restore access to global markets for Russian agricultural exports. Meanwhile, the US and Russia have agreed on a temporary ban on strikes against Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This will cover pipelines, power plants, and refineries. The Kremlin says this energy truce will last for 30 days and could be extended by mutual agreement. The White House has confirmed that Russia and Ukraine have agreed to halt military action in the Black Sea. This includes ensuring safe navigation and preventing the use of commercial vessels for military purposes. However, Kiev is skeptical. President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Moscow of violating previous agreements and continuing strikes on energy facilities, despite promising a ceasefire. Zelensky has also criticized comments from a Trump envoy, Steve Witkoff. He claims Witkoff's remarks about Russia's control over occupied Ukrainian regions mirror Kremlin propaganda. Donald Trump, meanwhile, says his administration is engaged in deep discussions with both Russia and Ukraine. He claims that the negotiations are going well, but has not given any specific details on the progress. The White House has thanked Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for hosting these crucial talks. Let's listen in to what Trump and Zelensky had to say.
Передусім, на жаль, багато інформації, яку розповсюдують ті чи інші люди, і персона, про яку ви сказали, вона, його меседжі, на жаль, може, у нього багато різних меседжів, але ці меседжі дуже сильно співпадають з меседжами офіційного Кремля.
We're in deep discussions with Russia and Ukraine, and I would say it's going well, but it's a situation we should have never had to even think about. Should have never happened. We're in deep discussions with Russia and Ukraine, and I would say it's going well, but it's a situation we should have never had to even think about. Should have never happened.
We are joined by Dr. Veseled Ivanov-Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean of Jindal Global Law School, located in New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Popovsky, headlines around the world are saying that the Ukraine and Russia have agreed a truce in the Black Sea. But this comes with one demand, that Russia's gets its agricultural bank reconnected to SWIFT. Do you see any appetite in the West to partially ease sanctions in return for stability in the Black Sea?
No, I don't see that, but also it's not really a ceasefire, maritime ceasefire. There was never a maritime warfare, by the way. Have we ever heard of any battleships in the Black Sea fighting each other? No. And actually the military ships remain targets. So what happened is basically the Russian side manipulating and tricking Trump into something which doesn't bring anything, you know. The grain deal was agreed, by the way, 2.5 years ago, with the mediation of the Turkish President Erdogan. What happened yesterday was already agreed 2.5 years ago. And Ukraine always could export its grain going into the the west part of the Black Sea through the coast of Romania and Bulgaria. And it's 0.1 achievement. Basically, Russians want to give Trump anything to report to the American audience that Trump is doing something, which is nothing, zero. It's nothing about the ceasefire. The Russians and the Americans didn't mention the 30 days ceasefire, somehow deviating the talk to grain deal. Obviously, I understand Russians. They want some sanctions to be lifted, and they put it this way: lift the sanctions first, and then we will get a ceasefire. And Trump say exactly the opposite. Give me a ceasefire, and then I will lift some sanctions. And this is going on and going on and going on without zero progress, unfortunately.
Dr. Popovsky, how significant would you see the movement in these talks, especially also this banning these strikes on energy infrastructure? How meaningful is this in practical terms? And wasn't this agreed in that direct phone call between Trump and Putin previously? What's new about this angle?
Well, there is a little bit more hope there on the energy infrastructure, I must say, and let's see whether both sides will stop shooting at energy or oil refinery. I understand Russians why they want that, because Ukrainians very successfully destroyed a lot of oil refineries and pipes in the Russian Federation. And in response, what the Russian Federation was doing is to target energy infrastructure, but mostly during the winter, as to demoralize the Ukrainians by these electricity cuts in the big cities. That has been going on. Again, a very small achievement here on the energy infrastructure. Even that is not effective. Again, Russians don't say this is already operative. When it will start also will depend on some other, sanctions being lifted. And my feeling is Russia is continuing this dialogue simply because every time Trump talks to Putin or on a lower level they talk, this legitimizes Russia as aggressor and war criminal. Because that talk with the Americans brings a good spirit in Moscow that we are in negotiations, but they can go with that negotiations forever without stopping shooting into Ukrainian civilians.
Yes.
And that's what everybody in Ukraine realizes.
Dr. Popovsky, I want to finally touch on Zelensky's comments, now criticizing Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, former real estate developer and attorney who is actually at the forefront of these peace negotiations. How dangerous, he gave an interview to Tucker Carlson, which is the comments that Zelensky is criticizing. How dangerous is this blending of messaging, and could it undermine international support for Ukraine in what Steve Witkoff is saying in kind of sympathize? Some would say he is sympathizing towards Putin.
No, I don't think Steve Witkoff can undermine any support for Ukraine. It comes from 55 countries, military support, and political support comes from more than 100 countries. So Steve Witkoff is another arrogant and incompetent official who deliver very little so far. They get into a huge scandal with that Signal app, and they possibly will be replaced one day soon because they achieve nothing in any talks with Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, Zelensky is very polite, and he doesn't really openly criticize Trump or Witkoff. He continues to behave as a party in the negotiations, but behind the scene, they obviously understand that Trump and Witkoff and everybody else is incompetent and lacking any intellectual capacity to deliver any deal. And basically, they expect other actors, and this is the question now, when the other actors, the Chinese, the Turkish, the Europeans will step in and replace that incompetent US administration. Thank you.
Dr. Popovsky, thank you very much for joining us. We now move on to